Welcome to the Graduate Job Podcast, your home for weekly information and inspiration to help you get the graduate job of your dreams.
Hello and welcome to the Graduate Job Podcast with your host, James Curran. The Graduate Job Podcast is your home for all things related to helping you on your journey to find that amazing job. Each episode I bring together the best minds in the industry, speaking to leading authors, graduate recruiters and career coaches who bring decades of experience into a bite-sized weekly 30-minute-ish show. Put simply, this is a show I wish I had when I graduated. And a warm welcome to the 86th episode of the Graduate Job Podcast. I'm recording this intro in the sunshine of Thailand, and I have a very special episode for you today. Today I am joined on the show by IPS Grow. IPS stands for Individual Placement and Support, and it is an NHS-backed graduate scheme which is rapidly expanding and looking for graduates to join as employment specialists who will help to place people with mental illness in work. It's a great graduate scheme encompassing a mix of social work, psychology and recruitment, where you'll be making a real difference to people's lives. In the episode, we delve into what exactly IPS Grow is and what you will be doing on a day-to-day basis as an IPS employment specialist. We cover the application process in detail, how and when to apply, and what to expect at each stage of the process. We also explore top tips which will allow you to stand out from the crowd through the recruitment process. Now, no matter where you are in your job search, if you've never heard of IPS Grow or are in the middle of the application process to them, this is an episode which you aren't going to want to miss. Now, the only link you need to remember from today is graduatejobpodcast.com/IPS, as that has all of the links to everything which we discuss and a full transcript which you can download. So make sure you head on over there. Before we start, let's have a little message from today's sponsor, who are our friends at careergym.com. There are some things in life you can't escape, and psychometric tests when you apply for a graduate job is one of them. Career Gym is the #1 place for you to undertake all of your psychometric tests which you will face when you apply for a graduate job. Now, the bottom line is, no matter what graduate job you apply for, from the global giants to the small company around the corner, you're going to have to do some type of verbal and numerical reasoning, situational judgment and working style tests. At careergym.com, you can practice all of these, and they come with detailed explanations, and you can compare yourself against your peers or do them under time pressure. And as a valued listener of the show, they will give you 20% off all of their tests if you use the code GJP. So head on over to careergym.com, that's careergym.com, and use the code GJP to get 20% off all of their tests and start practicing today. Now on with the show. A very warm welcome to Martina Gibbons, recruitment lead for IPS Grow. Martina, welcome to the Graduate Job Podcast.
Thanks, James. It's great to be here on the show and have the opportunity to talk about IPS.
Excellent. And why don't you then start by telling us a little bit about IPS and what it is that you do?
Yes, of course. So IPS, it stands for Individual Placement and Support. It's the leading model for helping people with severe mental illness into work. So actually, the employment statistics for people with mental health conditions are shocking. 90% of people want to work, yet only 8% are in work. And traditional models of employment haven't had great success. There's around, 11% of people with mental health were supported into work by the work programme. So IPS is designed to change this, really. And we're looking to recruit and develop individuals who are passionate about mental health, who are keen to make a change in someone's life. The actual IPS model, it's based on over 20 years of research, which includes 22 randomized control trials, and is shown to be the leading model to help people with severe mental illness secure paid employment. And as I'm sure you can guess, as the name suggests, it's about working closely with individuals to find a job that they actually want. So in terms of the mental health side of things, getting into employment, it's a vital part of the recovery journey. The IPS model is where an employment specialist works in a community mental health team alongside psychiatric nurses, social workers, psychologists to help that individual get into work. The employment specialist will use their contacts, initiative and skills to find employment opportunities. some of which won't be advertised, and communicate with their colleagues to ensure that their clients can obtain and retain work effectively while staying in good health.
Wow, I mean, those statistics you mentioned at the beginning, there's a huge market there of people who are, looking to get jobs, who are, struggling at the moment.
Yes, definitely. I think that is one of the things where it does differentiate from traditional models of employment support, is that traditionally employment was more focused on training a person and then placing them in a role. So whether that's going through volunteering or sheltered employment, whereas the IPS model actually turns this on its head, and it's about placing the person and then giving them the support and the training to actually excel within that role. Mm-hmm. And there's so much links between mental health and working. And it is, I guess, when you think back, it is something that when you introduce yourself to someone, the standard questions you're asked is, hi, what's your name? What do you do? Where are you from? Yep. And for someone, it's so crucial. It's just how someone feels when they're constantly saying they're unemployed. Mm-hmm. And when you think back, 90% of these people do want to work, but yet only 8% are. So it really is, an incredible model where we can turn this statistic around. And the role of the employment specialists working within IPS, they're building hope for people, they're building networks, and they really are actually changing people's lives.
Brilliant. No, it sounds a really interesting role, and a really broad role as well, in terms of the different work you'll be doing, and the coaching aspect of it, the working with the companies, working with the the person looking for a job. It's it touches upon lots of different aspects there.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think one of the main appeals to a lot of people is that you are actually situated or integrated with the community mental health team. So you're working alongside, the psychologists, psychiatrists, the nurses, the support workers. But then you have that really good rapport and relationship with your client, and building their hope in their recovery journey, as well as then you're actually out in the community, speaking with employers, building relationships and networking on that side. So it really is diverse and multifaceted. There's so many different connections going on, which is quite rare, I guess, in a lot of roles.
No, definitely. And what type of people are you looking for? What type of people do you think make good IPS specialists? Or is it, given the broad nature of the role, it's about having people with a broad set of skills?
Yes. So in terms of what we've found, in terms of what makes a really good IPS employment specialist, is more so the qualities of the person. So IPS itself is based on 8 principles, which one of the key ones is that anyone who wants to work should have the opportunity to do so. And it's this belief that someone with a mental health challenge is able to work as long as they have that motivation, and they should be supported to find the role that they actually want to do and they would enjoy doing. So I think one of the key qualities of someone is that, first of all, the belief that despite a mental health challenge, anyone can work. Then you need to have a really good ability to network and build a rapport and build good relationships with people. Actually listen to your client in terms of their needs and what they're looking to achieve, but also listen when you're speaking out, engaging with employers. Then you also need a motivation and organisation. You are going to have a caseload of different clients, and you do need to be organised, be proactive, as well as be dedicated. It's not, I don't want to get it wrong. I don't want to mislead anyone. It isn't an easy job. You are juggling 100 different things at a time, but that's one of the really exciting things about it. So I guess someone that's quite confident to go out and build those relationships, someone that's motivated and dedicated to keep looking and keep searching for that right role to help someone fulfill their dreams.
And is it particular people with particular degrees that you're looking for, or are you, agnostic to this type of degree people have done?
Not necessarily. We have had a lot of success with IPS employment specialists coming from a psychology background or degree, but equally in terms of people that have a degree in social sciences or health and social care, they've really excelled within the role. but it's really not even limited to someone with a degree. We've had a lot of success with individuals with lived experience. So someone that's had a mental health challenge themselves or support need. And as well, job changes. We've had bus drivers, teachers, people in the mental health field themselves, occupational therapists, support workers, who all have transitioned their roles into becoming a really successful IPS employment specialist and found it a really rewarding career as well. So we're pretty open, I guess.
No, that's great, because often I'll get emails in to me from people listening to the show who, might have gone down one career path, or a few years into it now, have realised that it's not the one for them, and they're looking to change for a more fulfilling career. So I'm sure there'll be lots of people listening who his ears will have pricked up at the job description you've given for the IPS specialist and the type of work that we're doing. So I'm sure there'll be lots of people who will be interested in applying.
Yes.
In terms of the scheme, is it a set length? So how long people will be sort of progressing through? Does it have a set career path?
In terms of the scheme itself, so with the strong evidence base of the impact that IPS has, NHS England have committed to funding a rapid expansion of IPS services across the UK. So it has opened up currently a number of opportunities for people to join as an IPS employment specialist. There's major tranches of funding were committed under the 5-year forward view, as well as the NHS long-term plan, which sees access numbers increasing so there's currently 10,000 people with mental health support needs who can access the services. But by 2029, NHS have committed to increasing this to 115,000, which constitutes half of the eligible population. So in that sense, you can see how much it's rapidly growing. And then equally, there's a huge need for more people to join the workforce and actually join as IPS employment specialists. So there's an ongoing need for people to join us. In terms of next steps, you join as an employment specialist, you can progress to a team leader, where you then are managing a group of employment specialists. Some team leaders still carry a caseload themselves of clients and others don't. Then as well, you can become an IPS service manager, or maybe that quite a few people move then to the commissioning side or move to become occupational therapists. There may be some psychology graduates who do it for a couple of years and then move on to other areas within maybe using a little bit more of their psychology degree. I guess one of the huge benefits of the role is that you are in that multidisciplinary environment. So you get a really good exposure to a number of different roles within the NHS as well. Mm-hmm. So even if it's something you do immediately as you come out of university, in a couple of years' time, you may naturally find yourself moving towards a more clinical side, or equally a more occupational therapy side or support side. So it really is, I guess it's one of those roles that opens up so many doors and avenues as well for you to progress.
Yep. No, definitely. And what sort of starting salary would graduates be looking at?
So at IPS Grow, we advocate that the role should start at band 5, which is the starting salary of a nurse as well. There is a little bit of variation across the country, but it is something that we're looking to standardise as a band 5 role, which is, a really good starting salary for anyone that's sort of graduating from university. Mm-hmm. Or even job changing.
Yeah, and forgive my ignorance, what sort of bracket would that be? In how much would that be? So it would be the early 20s to late 20s, or shy of 30,000. Okay, that's as you said, that's a really good starting salary. And location-wise, at the moment, is it across the UK, or are there some particular areas with more roles available than others?
No, so the roles are positioned across the UK. They are mainly based in NHS trusts, but you can also find IPS employment positions in third sector organisations as well as the private sector. Okay, excellent. And I'm sure you've whet the appetite of the listeners, Martina, just with describing the role. So let's maybe move into how they would actually go about applying. So
maybe starting off, is it a central recruitment, or is it done on an individual sort of NHS trust basis?
It would be on an individual basis. However, we host all of the live vacancies on our website, ipsgrow.org.uk. So you can find all the vacancies there. They're all split into the various regions that they're located at. And then the actual general application process is there's an application form which you complete and send with your CV. In some cases, there'll be a telephone interview in the shortlisting process. However, generally, you then move on to assessment day, a face-to-face interview, which also includes a role play. So the role plays are realistic to the role. So they'll measure how you'll potentially perform. My best advice to anyone who's going to their assessment day, who might feel a little bit daunted about the role play, is just to embrace it. With any sort of role that you're going for, see it as much as you are being assessed in terms of your skills and suitability for the role, see it as a really good opportunity for you to see, actually, is this something that you enjoy doing on a day-to-day basis? Is it something that you think will fulfill you and something that you will enjoy doing?
And just digging in a bit deeper for the specifics of role play, what tends to separate out the candidates who do really well in the role play than from some of the people who struggle?
So in IPS, we're really looking for people who can be advocates and give clients that hope and opportunity and that control back to their lives. So I think the role play is a really good assessment of how people react in different situations. And really the whole purpose of the role plays is, and IPS, is not really what's the matter with me, it's what matters to me. So that's always the approach that we look with our clients. So it's the way that you, when you are faced with a situation in the role play, it's the way that you build that rapport and that trust. You're always encouraging the hope and the belief that someone can reach their goals. And equally, it's not even always just on the client basis. The role plays might be focused of your interaction in the community mental health team. So maybe you might even have almost an objection that maybe someone in the clinical team doesn't feel like the individual's ready to return to work, which isn't what the IPS model is about. It's actually, as long as they're motivated, regardless of their health symptoms, they should be supported to do that. But it doesn't then either mean that they're going into a full-time position. The employment specialist will really work to find the right fit of the role, and a lot of the time it will be about job carving. So that's a word that we use quite a lot within IPS, where it's really making the reasonable adjustments with the employer to make sure that the role fits the person. So you can really work around that, and I think that's something that really is changing in the workforce across the UK, but it's definitely something that needs a lot of work still as well.
Excellent, listeners. Top tips there. And just to let you know that if don't worry about scribbling all of this down, there'll be a full transcript of the show today and links to everything that we discuss, including the links to the IPS website where you can apply for jobs over at thegraduatejobpodcast.com/IPS. So Martina, maybe just stepping back a few stages in the application process. Is it year-round applications, or is it the sort of standard milk round, October through to January, where you're just accepting applications, or is it all year?
It is all year. With the NHS commitment to expanding the services, there are roles continuously being released. So currently we have 21 live vacancies on our website. However, next week that could jump to 30 or it could jump to 10. And with the expansion of, access targets increasing by 12-fold in the next 10 years, there are going to be, a number of opportunities across, varying in different regions on an ongoing basis. So definitely, even if you listen to this podcast in 6 months' time or a year, check out the website and see what live roles there are. Excellent.
And in terms of, can you do multiple applications, or is it just one application per NHS trust, or how does that work?
No, you can apply for each position individually. So maybe if there's a couple of different roles, so say in your local area, say you're looking for a role in Birmingham, and there's a role in an NHS trust, but also in a third sector organisation, you can definitely apply for both, and they will be considered as individual applications as well.
Oh, that's good to know. And another question. So we talked about the different types of degree people can apply with. Do you have any requirements on the type of grades people need to have got throughout university, or even stretching back to A-levels?
There's not necessarily any specifics in terms of education levels. As a desirable, it'd always be a 2-1, 2-2 degree. There is data involved in the role. So, basic Excel skills will be required, but you'll all have the training on the job as well. So there's not necessarily, it's not a strict sort of education background that you do need for the role, because it is really more based on your personality and your qualities and traits of the person.
Yeah, so on a case-by-case basis, depending on the skills and attributes that people bring.
Yes.
Oh, okay, excellent. And with the application process itself then, where do people tend to let themselves down?
It would probably be when it comes to the actual interview themselves. When my biggest recommendation is do your research around IPS, but also the bigger picture of mental health and recovery. The key part of what we're looking for is that passion, that someone is passionate about mental health. They're passionate about making an impact and change in someone's life. Individuals with mental health conditions face so many inequalities, and there's so many barriers that they have to navigate through on a daily basis, that the role of the employment specialist is to at least help them overcome this one barrier that they face in securing employment. And I think when this doesn't come across, when they don't see that passion in the interview or even in the application form, or just a very vague understanding of mental health and what it does mean as the wider picture, that then kind of signals up that maybe they're not the right person for the role, because they don't probably have the qualities. Because we are happy to train people in the model, happy to provide the support to really enable them to excel. But if you don't have that belief, you can't change that. So I guess that's probably where people let themselves down the most.
Excellent. And maybe final question, Martina, before we move to the quick fire question round. How important is it that people have had any, previous experience in the field of mental health?
It's definitely a desirable factor in terms of an understanding of mental health, whether that's lived experience, knowledge of, a friend or family member, or even, previously worked within mental health. But it's not necessarily something that you need to have, a clear background in. If it's an interest, if you run for the charity because it's something that's, very close to your heart, that is really what we're looking for.
Excellent. And mental health is such a broad spectrum of, so I'm sure most people have been touched in some way with family and friends. They'll have experiences to call on there.
Yeah, definitely.
And then maybe a final question. What top tip would you give people who are applying for how they can stand out?
So my top tips for someone to stand out will really be to do your research around IPS and also the bigger picture around mental health and recovery. But also be yourself in terms of whether it's the role play or the application form. We really are assessing people in terms of their qualities and, their personality traits. So let that shine through. And together, we can really change these statistics and really support people and to build hope in them and fulfill their dreams through employment.
Oh, brilliant. No, that is a lovely way to finish the main part of the interview on. So, Martina, moving on to the quickfire question round of the questions I ask each guest on the show. So, first up, what book would you recommend listeners should read? So, Maybe specifically people who are applying to IPS, is there a particular book where, would really help them stand out through the application process if they've read that?
Yes, so actually the book I'm going to recommend, I've taken from the Centre for Mental Health training that we actually offered to the IPS employment specialists as well. It's What Colour is Your Parachute by Richard Bowles.
Oh, yeah, classic.
Yeah, probably heard of it. It's a very classic job hunting and career changing book. But it basically is a practical manual for job changes, but it takes a bit more of a holistic approach, which does really nicely link in with IPS, because it really focuses on the idea that you need to know yourself and build that self-knowledge. I think they go through a 7-petal flower model. And I think in terms of IPS, that's so crucial to the model as well as the actual service that you're delivering, in terms of it's about individual preferences. It's about finding the right role for that person. So this book is really it flatters the role of an IPS employment specialist really well. And then also it just demystifies the entire job search process, whether it's writing CVs to networking, and just guides you towards finding your dream job. So it's really nice for someone applying for the role to read it, and then they can actually action it every day with their clients in the role.
Brilliant. Win-win. So listeners, if you're applying to IPS, make sure that you check out this book, which will be linked to in the show notes over at graduatejobpodcast.com/IPS. Next question, Martina. What website or internet resource would you recommend to our listeners?
I'd recommend LinkedIn. I don't know how much people probably mention that. It's probably every time. But to me, LinkedIn is just a really good way to network. There's groups, you can follow interests, you can get involved in forum discussions. It's genuinely just a great platform to learn from your peers, but also the leaders in the field. You can follow various hashtags. So, I'd follow IPS, mental health, recovery. And as well, it's a good way to access webinars, events, as well as jobs. So definitely I'd recommend everyone has a good profile on it and is active on it. Definitely.
No, brilliant tip. And yeah, it is a trove of information for a job seeker. As you said, building networks, speaking to people who maybe already work in the IPS specialist role, reaching out to them for advice about how they got into it, what they like about the role. Yeah, it's a brilliant website, so top recommendation there. And the final question, what one tip would you give listeners to help them on their job search today?
I'd say probably stop thinking about the actual job. Probably relating back as well to Richard Bowles, it'd be thinking about how or where you'd like to make an impact or create change, and then explore this further. So a lot of people in IPS, so they might have a passion to support people or, make a difference and change their lives. But it doesn't mean you need to be a nurse or a doctor. You don't have to be on the front line. There are so many other areas, maybe it's in policy or commissioning, where you can have this same impact. But, people get very thrown off track by just always thinking about the job title or the job and the field. But really, I'd say it's just finding something that you're passionate about, and then finding the career that a job that you can actually fulfill that passion in.
That's really good advice. If you're passionate about a job and you enjoy a job, or you will enjoy a job, that passion is so good when it comes across in the interview process. You really stand out over someone who, isn't as interested. You'll be head and shoulders above them in the interview process.
Yeah, definitely.
So Martina, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. What is the best way that listeners can get in touch with you and also IPS Grow?
So definitely check out our website, ipsgrow.org.uk /vacancies for all of our live roles. And then if you want to find out a little bit more about IPS or upcoming positions, email support@ipsgrow.org.uk.
And listeners, as I said, links to everything we discussed today, including all those website links and email addresses, are over in the show notes at graduatejobpodcast.com/IPS. Martina, thank you so much for appearing on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Many thanks again to Martina for coming on the show to discuss IPS Grow, an exciting graduate scheme which is expanding rapidly and on the lookout for graduates such as you, dear listener. So make sure you get your application in now. As Martina mentioned, they're looking for a diverse range of applicants, so whether you are fresh out of university or maybe a good few years from graduating, have a look and get your application in. Don't forget to get a copy of her top book recommendation, What Colour is Your Parachute?, to impress them in the interview. Click on the links in the show notes to buy from Amazon and help support the show. Do get in touch with me at hello@graduatejobpodcast.com if you have any questions, feedback on the show, or if you would like coaching help and advice with your applications, interviews and assessment centres. Don't be shy. And if you're interested in IPS, then stay tuned, as in the coming weeks I will have an interview with an IPS employment specialist who will be sharing their experiences of what the role is like, so you can learn more about it in detail, from the day-to-day specifics to the application process from a graduate's perspective. So that is it from me. I hope you enjoyed the episode today, but more importantly, I hope you use it and apply it. See you next time.